Welcome to Mind Power, a Brains R Us program brought to you by Centerpoint Research Institute. In these special episodes, you'll hear thought-provoking articles designed to expand your mind, useful tips to improve your life, and the latest neuroscience research to help you tap into your fullest potential. Now here's Ryan Standifird with today's Mind Power.
This week's article is Don't Be a Puppet on a String: How to Take Control of Your Life, written by Ryan Standifird, read by Ryan Moore. Our brains are amazing. Over the course of a day, we make millions of tiny neural connections as we perceive the world around us and process that information into what Centerpoint's late founder Bill Harris liked to call our internal map of reality. For many of us, we even have a set path for certain strings of these neural connections that form our routines. For example, I make a pot of coffee every morning, and I always do it the same way. I use the same amount of beans and spend the same length of time grinding them up. I pour the same amount of water in the coffee maker, and I always end up with the same tasting cup of coffee, just the way I like it. But I don't have to think about the process of making coffee while I'm making it. I just do it, almost unconsciously, in a groggy sort of morning daze. This is because my brain is very familiar with the neural pathways I need to follow to complete this morning ritual. And the more times I follow this same pattern, the easier it is for my brain to follow that specific pathway unconsciously. In fact, all of our daily routines are mapped out as well-worn paths in our brain, the unconscious strings that control our lives. Have you ever driven home from work, lost in thought, and before you know it, you're in your driveway? You can thank your string of driving home from work neural pathways that are so ingrained in your brain that it's easy for you to complete this task, even as your consciousness is focused elsewhere. Let's use another example. If you've ever played an instrument or a sport, or you've written something down, then you've probably experienced muscle memory before. Muscle memory happens when you repeat a specific motion over and over until you don't even have to think about it. Throwing a baseball, kicking a soccer ball, writing your name. If you've done any of these things enough times, you don't have to think about the action while you perform them. The same is true for your life, for better or for worse. The more often you participate in a certain way of thinking or acting, the easier it is for you to keep thinking or acting that way unconsciously. This has its advantages in that it helps you learn to be automatic at certain tasks, like driving and making coffee. But it also has its disadvantages. When we participate in the same counterproductive behavior or activities, usually as a coping mechanism in response to stress, they can lead to some really bad habits. Have you ever been scrolling through social media and then saw something that upset you? Maybe it was a post that talked trash on your favorite sports team, or a political post that was inflammatory and designed to spur arguments online. This happened to me recently. I was scrolling through my Facebook feed and saw a friend from high school had posted something that was totally ridiculous. I was so annoyed with the post that I closed the Facebook app. And then 2 seconds later, I unconsciously opened the Facebook app again. I'd made the decision. I don't want to look at Facebook anymore right now. But I opened it back up right away, unconsciously. Why? Because I accidentally trained my brain to automatically open Facebook as a way to cope with stress. I'd become caught in a loop where the very thing I normally use to reduce my stress was in fact the cause of my stress in the first place. So many people are being pulled along through life by the unconscious strings that they've created for themselves. And oftentimes these strings were created as a way to cope with stress and anxiety. Someone who lives in a place with congested freeways might develop a road rage string that activates when the traffic gets bad. This string was originally created as a way for them to blow off some steam and to reduce stress while driving in heavy traffic. Let's say that the person is now on a date with someone, and they are driving to a nice restaurant where they have a dinner reservation. But what's this? The freeway is all piled up, and now they're running late. So, the driver's road rage string activates to deal with this added stress, just as it does every time there's traffic on their commute to and from work. The driver starts wailing on the horn, shaking their fist, and letting the curses fly. Meanwhile, the date in the passenger seat sits in stunned silence, seeing the different side of the driver for the first time. The driver didn't purposely activate that string. It just happened unconsciously. And now things are a little awkward at dinner. So how can we keep these strings of unconscious reactions from dominating our lives? How to free yourself from your unconscious strings. Step 1. Become aware of your unconscious strings and their triggers. Now, not all unconscious strings are bad, but they make a lot of decisions for you. So it's always good to know what strings are pulling you this way and that. Once you figure out why you've created a string and the purpose it serves in your life, you can then start to do something about it, if it isn't serving your goals. I'll keep my morning coffee string around as it serves what I consider a productive purpose. But if the road rage driver in the example knew that they had this road rage string, they might have been able to resist falling into the same old pattern of behavior, and the date might have gone much smoother. The next time you're feeling stressed out, take a second to witness what your response is. When I say witness, I mean to observe with curiosity. Whatever the response, that's your current string to use to deal with that specific trigger. Then think about whether that response serves your goals or gets in the way. Step 2. Find a more productive response to the triggering event. Now that you know what your strings are and what triggers them, you can start to do something about it. You gain the power to choose what your response to the trigger is. If you realize that traffic sets you off, take some time to think about another way to respond to the congested freeway. Maybe you turn up the radio and start singing along. Maybe you take a deep breath and count to 10. Maybe you pull out a stick of gum and start chewing. The more often you do this other action in response to the trigger, the more likely you are to replace your old unconscious response with this new productive one. You are essentially forging a new pathway of neural connections. And the more often you go down that new pathway, the stronger those connections get. Step 3. Be consistent in using the new response until it becomes the default. I'll be honest with you. Severing your strings and creating new ones is hard to do. It's all too easy to slip back into the old counterproductive strings when you're stressed out. We do these things unconsciously after all. So keep up your awareness. If you notice you're going back to the old string, stop and take a breath. Consciously witness what you're doing unconsciously. Because once you're conscious of these actions, you gain the power of choosing your response rather than doing it automatically. As Bill used to say, once you have a choice, you'll always choose what serves you and drop what doesn't. If you want a huge advantage when it comes to freeing yourself from counterproductive strings, there's one thing that will really make all the difference. Meditation. Meditation increases your awareness so that you can more easily notice your triggers and strings. And the best way to meditate is with Holosync. At the time I'm writing this, I've been using Holosync every day for a little more than 6 months. But even in that short amount of time, I've already identified hundreds of strings that I didn't realize were dictating my life. Here's a quick list of some of the activities that I've recently noticed all the strings attached to them. Making my morning coffee, cleaning up after my dog, writing for mind power, ordering food delivery, playing video games, watching television, calling my parents, driving into the city, using social media, doing the dishes, cooking a meal, making the bed, getting to sleep, meditating. Some of these had productive strings attached to them, while others were counterproductive. But now I'm aware of these strings, and I've already made some changes to how I respond to the stress that triggered them. The result? I order less food delivery and cook more often. I use less social media. I do the dishes every night so they don't pile up. I clean the backyard once a week. I get to sleep at a regular time. I call my parents at least once a week. I'm more patient when I hit traffic. I'm more confident when I write. I'm overall more happy and carefree. And I meditate every morning. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. So if you want to stop being a puppet on a string, then start meditating every day. You might be surprised at how much control you actually have over your life once you become aware of who's really pulling the strings. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this article, please like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be well.
This episode of Brains R Us is brought to you by the Buy HoloSync app, the only official app for HoloSync. Enjoy quick daily brain-enhancing meditations, long-form HoloSync radio stations for up to 8 hours of continuous brainwave states, easily access all of your HoloSync suites and courses, and listen to more Brains R Us podcast episodes, all from your favorite device. Head on over to holosync.app/podcast26 right now to claim a free 7-day premium trial, no credit card necessary.